everyone. This is Cindy and Sana, and we have Kim Howerton with us today. Welcome, Kim.
Thanks for having me.
For those of you that don't know, Kim has, along with the other work that she does, and she'll tell you that, she has co authored a book with Dr. Berry, Common Sense Labs, and with Neisha Berry, a holiday cookbook. And man, I'll tell you, they're both great. They're absolutely great. Full of information. The recipes are fantastic. It's just, thank you so much for that.
No problem.
But anyhow, we have a few people in here. We'll just get their chats up here. This is Jerry. Ray Key. KH for the win. Just got up from my nap at perfect timing, too. Yeah, they've been sitting here. Brenda Foley. Hi, Brenda.
Hey, Brenda.
This is Lynn. Hi, Lynn.
Hi, Lynn. Happy Friday.
And Jerry says there's a special place in my heart for Kim. Everyone, if you haven't made Kim's world famous lemon curd, who are you?
Yeah.
It's only 4 ingredients. It's not hard. It's just 4 ingredients.
All right. So I'll put that up there. And go back here. This is Arden. Hi, Arden. Jeff saying hello. And just everybody saying hi.
Hello, everybody.
I've got Kim's YouTube channel here that I'm going to post.
Sounds good.
And there you go. So I'm not even sure how long you've been following the ketogenic way of eating.
I can
and
fill
all
you
that. How long have you been doing that, and why did you start?
Well, quite honestly, the year has started to escape me. Enough years have passed. It's been at least 7 years since I started. So a little bit about my background is that I struggled with weight issues from childhood, compulsive overeater, chronic health problems, so PCOS, migraines, depression. There are some others in there. I had 2 surgeries, but by the time I was an adult, I had a couple more after that. Things just kept breaking down. Hypothyroidism, just kind of a mess. And then I reached my late 30s and was actually a life coach and a business coach. And then decided, like, at some point I'd kind of been like, I'm just going to be a happy fat person and not worry about my weight, because I feel out of control every time I try to address my weight and my health. And I didn't really see a lot of change possible for me until I sort of spiraled so bad that I was just in such a high level of distress about the way I felt about myself. Not like yes, from a self-image standpoint, but like the addict was front and center, and I felt just constantly out of control in making food decisions. And so I decided I had to address it. And I made a couple of conscious calls there, but one of them was to go on a ketogenic diet. And I felt a lot of shift happen really rapidly in that transition, including mood improvements, general symptom improvements, and weight loss. And so I was really very into that. And so did that for about a year before I was like, well, I'm doing this coaching. I have decade of coaching skills. I should probably bring that to this arena where I feel like I have a chance to impact more people in a more powerful way, rather than like saving a marriage, saving a life felt more like important, right? And so I both important, but like, it was sort of a little bit of a shift. And so I brought my coaching skills over to health, and then decided I better get pretty educated on all things health. And so that's how my journey kind of began and continued. And since then, it's been sort of a meandering, winding path of picking up new skills, shifting things, learning things, changing, just as pivot, as they say.
Right.
Yeah.
So
And so
what-
I've lost over 100 pounds and, have like made tweaks to my weight over time. But at this point, it's been over 7 years since the start of my journey, and kind of went, lost some weight, stayed the same, lost more weight, stayed the same. It's kind of been like a step down journey over time.
Right. So between the three of us, how much have you lost now, Sana?
Pre-pregnancy,
pregnancy weight.
yes, pre-pregnancy. The last time I had a weigh-in, it was 151 pounds lost.
Wow, congratulations.
Thank you.
And I have lost about 110 from my highest ever.
Wow.
Yes.
Nice.
So we've lost about 3 people sitting here.
Exactly.
That's great.
We are half of our former selves.
Right. Pretty much. So what, other than the coaching, and I know you do a lot of speaking.
Coaching, then I started teaching classes. Then I started doing speaking engagements. So I'll talk at conferences. And then I also, along the way, I'm a foodie. So longtime foodie for sure. And so early in my journey, I started, converting recipes to keto versions of things. And so I started doing online recipe books. And then, so I create recipes, I write health topics, I do speaking engagements, and I run courses on weight loss stalls. So because that was part of my journey, I did keto, that keto like diet, like that rapid weight drop. And then I plateaued, and then I got stuck. And so me unraveling that little thing is how I then kind of created a course on how to fix a stall. And then that's pretty much it. So recipes, cookbooks, coaching, classes, speaking. There you go.
You're not at all busy, are you?
I don't even know what I do anymore. I like get up, and that's why I said to Cindy, I was like, Cindy, you got to remind me. I'm a little ADHD. I will lose track. I'll be like squirrel, so that's why I like doing so many things, because I kind of need a constant change of interest. Oh, I have a podcast as well.
Yes. And you go live once a week?
And I go live most Tuesday evenings. Yep. On YouTube. And I do a little Facebook thing too.
Yep. So I had caught you on one live stream a while back, one of your lives, where I was working with, trying to help this girl that's one of my subscribers and a friend who was having gut issues. And I had asked you a question, and it really helped her out tremendously.
Oh, good.
And I said, yeah, I had told her to go carnivore. She says, and you said to me, you'd make a good coach, because that's exactly what I would tell her. It was pretty funny.
Yeah,
But
for
yeah,
sure.
so-
I mean, I think that at this point in my journey, I eat low carb. That's what works best for me now. But over the course of my journey, I've done everything from high fat keto to carnivore to what I now would call like high protein, low carb. And they all have served different purposes at different times. And I'm very much, I think if there's anything that's true about me, it's that I am a believer in one size does not fit all. And one thing is not better than another unless you can define what it is better for.
Right. Well, that's where it all comes out, where everybody says you got to find what works for you.
Yep.
That's the only way it's going to be sustainable, for one.
Right.
And the only way you're going to be happy.
Absolutely.
And
yeah, I
healthy.
see a lot of people out there who are
So-
like, I keep trying and trying and trying the XYZ, and I keep falling off. I keep breaking, and I'm like, maybe XYZ is this for you, right? If it's that challenging.
So
Yeah.
back to the lemon curd, Jerry says, so good, rich, and tastes like the stuff that non-keto folks eat.
Yeah, it's super rich. And super lemony. I'm a big lemon fan. And I do find some of the flavors that people, when they go keto, miss is that sort of citrusy brightness, right? That you might get from eating a lot of fruit or things. And so the lemon curd is a nice little touch of that because it's super lemony. It's literally lemon juice, sweetener, butter, and egg yolks. That's all that's in it.
Yeah.
Wow. Sounds good to me. My husband's not a lemon fan, but that sounds good.
He might actually love it, Cindy. It is so good.
Love seeing everyone at KPL. Will you be back this year?
I don't know if I'll be at Keto Palooza or not yet, but I loved that conference. So it was such a pleasure.
Will you be at Hack Your Health?
I'm not going to Hack Your Health.
That's a bummer.
I know. I had to make some strategic calls on conferences. That I'm like, I got a ton of projects this year, and every time I go for a conference, super fun, but I get like a little off track for a while.
It's busy for sure. Keto Palooza.
You are right. I am an OG.
Yes. Keto Palooza. Adam has got that so regimented. It's like, this is going on this day, and that's it. But it's so much fun. It's great.
Yeah, I am.
Two keto dudes and dish on their site.
When I first got into keto, I was hooked up with the two keto dudes who are some friends of mine out of Connecticut and Australia. And they had a podcast way back in the day, and I was one of their site admins and would answer questions on their Facebook group.
Nice.
Oh, very cool.
John Gugahan. It's not the way you say his name either, but that'll work. But he's in a lot of the live streams that we've been in, a lot of the chats.
Nice.
And Emily from Two Crazy Ketos, or from Ready Set Keto, calls him Gugahan. So it just
Gugahan.
It just
all right. Well, I call him JG.
There you go. Agree with lemon curd. John loves her sauna. Say hot dogs. But she just
my New Jersey accent.
All right.
Give him what he wants.
Hot dogs.
There you go.
Oh, nice.
Thank you, Brenda.
And I actually met Ken Berry before Ken Berry was the thing that Ken Berry has become in terms of, the PhD. He'd just written Lies My Doctor Told Me and was wanting to talk about it. And I interviewed him about it early on in my, YouTube talking career. And then he just blew up from there. So, not from just my interview, I will say, but, after that point.
That's obviously how you got connected with him.
It is. Neisha, yeah, he was just wanting to talk about the book, and he and I connected on to do a live stream together, and we hit it off really well. We got along really well, and he's like, you and my wife would get along really well. And so I was like, oh, okay. So we ended up all at a conference together relatively soon after that, and it was indeed true that we got along super well, and Neisha and I were immediate besties. So then that just sort of spiraled from there.
Well, that's awesome.
Yeah. I love when you do the visits to their house and then you and Neisha just start cooking up in the kitchen.
Yes.
I know we have a little bit of like a sibling relationship on some of them. Yeah.
I love when that's recorded because then it makes you feel like, when you're watching from like the outside in, it doesn't make you feel that way that you're looking in as an outsider. I love it.
Yeah, we like to have people kind of visit with us, right?
Yes.
Like
that's exactly what it feels like. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Lynn says we're all amazing.
Well, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Brenda Foley has lost 87 and maintaining. That's
Great
the
job,
hardest
Brenda.
part. The maintenance that's been going on for about a year and a half for me now. That's the hardest part.
Yeah.
It's crazy
that we might have a lifetime's practice of trying to lose weight, but most of us have not practiced maintaining a weight at our intentionally.
Right. It's tough. That's the toughest part. So when you can do that, that's kudos. Because
Yeah.
John has a question for you. Do calories matter?
I think they do. I don't think they're the primary thing, but here's the way that I look at it. Calories are simply the unit of measure of food energy, right? So when we're comparing different, like Jason Fung has actually said this, and it's my favorite, which is right. If you said something like, I kind of have made it my own, right? But I got it from Jason, which is saying like calories in, calories out is like saying the plane crashed because of a loss of altitude, right? It says what happened, but it doesn't explain why the plane crashed. Yes, we know that it lost altitude and hit the ground. Gravity is the reason that the plane crashed, right? But that doesn't explain what happened upstream, like in terms of your hunger signals, your metabolism, your hormones, right? So calories are not a lie. They're a unit of measure, but calories in versus calories out isn't a simple equation. It doesn't mean what most people think it means. And because of that, the word calories is so often misused that I understand why a lot of people in the keto space are like, calories are BS and they don't mean anything. It's because people try and say they're simple when they're actually kind of complex. Not the calorie itself, that's simple, but how that works in terms of your weight loss, it's not just 1 + 1 is 2. It's a more complex equation.
Right. Well, we hear it constantly, and I get where John's coming from.
Right.
Several people, including Dr. Berry, calories don't matter. And
Yeah,
they do. Depend even on carnivore, even strict carnivore, you can overeat.
For sure.
And it's like, what?
Yeah. My personal take, and I think I know, like, I think the reason that a lot of people will say calories don't matter is, let's say you are 300 pounds, you're got an A1C of 11, you're in just kind of a health shambles. Well, for you, probably just changing the ways that you eat, the ways that you live, the foods that you choose will realign your hunger signals well enough that you don't have to pay any attention to calories for quite some time. Or ever. Some people never have to pay attention to calories. I am someone who has to pay attention to calories unless I want to just maintain around 200, 210 pounds, which is more than that's where if I match my hunger level to what I will weigh, that's about where I settle, unless I consciously and intentionally manipulate the calories.
Right.
Which I've
noticed that for myself too. Sorry.
Yeah.
I've noticed that for myself too. I had upped my calories because I pretty much consistently watch count my macros. And when I first started keto, I had my calories set at 1,200. No question. Didn't go over
low.
And I was great.
Yeah.
But I have had gastric bypass too back in 2007. So, but then I upped them to 1,600. And I only eat 2 meals a day just because I'm not hungry in the morning. So getting that 1,600 was easy. But then the weight started coming on. I'm like, okay, that's too many for me. I got to dial that back down. So yeah, I could never do 2,000. There's no way.
Yeah, people are confused about this part about calories. You can I have a client. This is the story I have with her every time she restarts a thing with me. she tends to eat around 1,200 calories. Like when she's out in the wild, right? Like of her own natural tendencies. When we bump her calories up, she starts losing weight. Now, someone would say, well, doesn't that mean that calories are BS, right? And I say no, because what I know about her is when she eats 1,200 calories, she's tired all the time and she doesn't do hardly any activity. But once she starts eating a little more, she has zest for life, she has energy, she has get up and go. She does all sorts of active things that she doesn't do when she's underfed. So yes, how much she eats has gone up, but her expenditure goes up even more. So I think that can be very confusing for people when they're like, but I'm eating more and I'm losing more. It's a multi-faceted equation.
Right. It's a tough thing when you're trying to figure that out and you get to that stall and it's like, okay, for me, I had upped those calories.
Yeah.
And little by little, that weight's going up. And I'm like, all right, I need to back those calories down some. Now, the other thing I've done is, as far as exercise and stuff, I started bowling after 20 years of not doing so 3 nights a week.
All right.
And I'm like, so I'm not just sitting idly by and upping the calories. So it's like, okay, I just got to fine tune this.
Absolutely. And so often I think learning your maintenance calories is one of the most powerful things you can do, which is to find that sweet spot where you don't gain and you don't lose. And then you can make a lot better intelligent decisions from there.
For sure. So Jerry said, yes, those were the days. Kim is a founder in our space. Yes. And talking about Dr. Berry, you started him off. You gave him his.
Well,
you found him.
Maybe stretching. But I was there at the beginning. I'll say it that way.
There you go. You interviewed him, which got him started. You started it.
It's all me. It's all
right. You can take credit for all that. All those millions of subscribers he's got.
Yeah, totally me. Yeah, no. He was going to be him, I just was glad to meet him on the way.
Yes. I was tickled to meet him also.
I remember the first time I met Dr. B in person. He is a tall man, and that was my first impression when I was like, whoa, you're a very tall man.
Yeah. I met him the first time at Ketopalooza 22. In 2022. And
you saw the line.
Nice and so approachable and just
absolutely
just so pleasant.
He actually just really cares about people being successful, which is I think why he's been so successful himself in spreading the message, because he wants this for people.
Yes.
Yeah.
Jerry has a question. What's your immediate future look like, Kim? Stay in Cali, another book or books, name change?
Good question. So I will be staying, well, I mean, never say never, but I'm a California native and my folks are here. My brother's actually moving to Italy, so I will be visiting there, but otherwise everybody's here. So I will probably say it's really hard to beat the weather when you're a native. I'm in Northern California. I am working currently on a redo of Common Sense Labs with Dr. Ken Berry. So it'll be we're tripling the length of the book. So we're adding a lot more information, and that's going to be published sometime when the publisher publishes it, because we're going through a publisher for that. So it will be in bookstores as well as online. Nice. Who knows after that what the next book will be, maybe a cookbook, but I got to get this one finished first. And then I have sort of transitioned a lot of my social media just to use my name, Kim Howerton. I still use the Ketonist, but because I'm sort of more general health and not necessarily just keto, and I'm kind of hard to pin down about exactly what I do all the time. I just like my website is kimhowerton.com, and and I talk about lots of stuff. So
Right. That's, when I first started my channel, I had reached out to Steve from Serious Keto. And I said, because he's had some really good success with his channel and he does a lot of stuff. And I asked him, I said, what is your advice? I said, I'm thinking of changing my name from just my name. He said, don't put yourself in a corner. He said, whatever you do. I said, all right, I'll leave it at my name.
Yeah, and that's when I first started. I just thought, oh, if I have keto in my name, people will find me, know what I do better. And maybe that was true back then when keto was super duper niche. But now it's kind of a little bit more challenging to, because now I'm like, if I post a recipe that has a quarter of an apple in it, people are like, that's not keto. And I'm like, oh, okay.
Well, see, that's what he was talking about. He said, I backed myself in a corner with Serious Keto. He said, and man, the slightest thing, and people go absolutely berserk. And it's like, oh my word. It's crazy.
People will find fault with everything. That's just the way it's going to be.
It is. And if it wasn't that, it would be something else.
Something else.
For sure. It's if you're going to be a social media person to any degree, you're like, you got to thicken the skin.
Oh,
and that's what I've appreciated so much about you, Kim, is because I know Neisha has made a lot of mention about, stepping away from labels. But I know way from the beginning, that's what you were all about. Because even, in like your Facebook Lives you were doing, like, thankfully your Facebook Lives were not like lightning speed like Dr. Berry.
Right.
They were able to be more personable. So it's like people really were able to get the message that, when they wanted to put label on things and when they wanted to kind of come across as being too hard on themselves and then being hard on everybody else because they're trying to push labels. That's huge. I mean, it's huge for especially like all of us that have a lot smaller a platform when people try to come at, full attack for us, to have those of you in the community that have such a huge platform setting that precedence. Huge. So thank you so much.
You're welcome.
For doing that.
I mean, quite honestly, this is, just the reality of the social media world. If I were more like, no, there's one right way and you can't vary from it, I would probably have more followers and be more successful. Because having that kind of like, I don't know if people just like the school marm thing or like, what is it about people's psyche? But people are very uncomfortable with flexibility. And so I think it triggers people when you're like, well, maybe it depends. Sometimes, it can be very triggering for people.
There are so many dogmatic people that just go crazy with, if anybody is labeled carnivore, is labeled themselves carnivore, and if they do anything spices, the dogmatic, the hardcore carnivores come out of the woodwork, and it's like, no, it's so crazy. It's crazy.
For sure.
Jerry, I remember meeting you, Cindy, and you jumped first into YouTube, and finally now I got 134 measly subscribers later, but look at Cindy killing it.
You just got to get started and keep going. It's just a time thing. Put in the work, do the lives. I did not put enough attention on my YouTube channel for a really long time, and it shows in my lack of growth as well. But when you put the time in, you keep going, it does eventually pay off.
And this is Christy. Hello, Christy. But yeah, it's when I first started, I talked to my husband, I talked to my sister Deb a lot. I'm like, I kind of want to do this and I kind of don't. I mean, I have a pretty thick skin. I don't let things, they'll just roll right off my back. I don't care. It's like,
great.
Well, it is what it is. I had this one comment, and I don't even remember what it was about or what it was in reference to, but this person said, nobody cares, Grandma.
Oh,
And I said,
nice.
somebody does.
Why are you
Delete.
here then?
And I'm like, I just
Yeah.
blocked them. It's like, whatever. But
It's
after I got
great.
my quip in there for him or
Yeah.
her, whatever it was. But yeah, I'm a grandma. That doesn't bother me at all. But
That's actually a big selling point. There are a lot of
That's right.
grandmas who need some
that's
help.
right. I
Maybe
am a
the other
grandma.
grandmas care.
I'm always the oldest one in these chats, most always.
Well, it's okay, Cindy. Someone thought my 7-year-old son making just playful noise in the background was me doing a breach of contract to an old lady in my background.
What? That's crazy.
So when you see absurd comments, I think that's as absurd as it gets. Is the child that I birthed, the child that I breastfed for 34 months.
Mhm.
I'm committing breach of contract with him.
That's crazy.
No, yeah.
So Brenda's
Um,
asking, what part of Italy will your brother be moving to? I'm part Sicilian. Can I go with you?
Florence.
Right?
Florence.
Oh, wow.
And
That's
Brenda
a
says
huge
she is
perk
62.
to have a family member live out of the country.
But
Yeah.
I what's I gonna say? I just got like distracted. I love to travel, so we should all go somewhere.
I've never been out of the country, but I've never been to California. Heck.
Really? It's funny. I
Really?
met somebody who said they'd never been like west of Texas. And
Mhm.
I was like, oh, you've never experienced lack of humidity then. And it's lovely. It's
I've been
lovely.
to Vegas, but I've just
Okay.
never been to California.
You're close. It's
Yeah,
close. Very
I
close.
was. I
Yeah.
was.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, we were
Go ahead.
never travelers as a
Mhm.
family growing up. I mean, we never
Yeah.
really took family vacations. They couldn't afford it. So, and then I had my kids and I was a single parent for most of their life. Again, can't afford those things. So you just do
Mhm.
what you can. And that was it. But, it's all good.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. And we weren't world travelers as children for
Mhm.
sure, but I think the first time I left the country I was 18. But that was a while ago.
And you came back. Well, not as
I
long
did.
ago as it was for me. I'll be 66 in a few weeks on Mother's
All
Day.
right. All right. Well, happy birthday.
Thank you.
You're right around, is that the 14th this year?
12th.
The 12th. Okay.
Yeah.
My boyfriend's the 14th, so right around that
Nice.
same time.
Oh,
But yeah. I think in this sphere of the so I remember what we're talking about. Social media thing is, I remember the first time somebody on a live stream with me suggested that if I were going to talk about health, I should be thinner. And that was when I was about 50 pounds more than I am now. I tend to get a little less of that now, but it was very challenging on an emotional level. And it was mostly challenging to hear somebody say that.
mhm,
And I don't think they meant super ill intent.
mhm.
Right.
I could be wrong, but it in hindsight, I'm like, I think they were conflicted, right? And I think that's it. If as a creator, as someone online, if you have inner conflict, right? I wasn't happy with my weight. So when someone brought up my weight, it shone a light on something where I had an ouchie, right?
Right.
And then that
Yeah.
feels really hard. So one of the things that I had, has been both a blessing and a curse on my journey is doing the work because, I have to do the work to help others do the work. And I don't know that I would have done all the work I've done if it wasn't for the fact that I have to pay it forward and do work with other people. And if I don't stay ahead of my BS, I'm not going to be able to deal with theirs.
Right.
So.
Right. When I had started my channel, I had already lost the majority of my weight.
Yeah.
And so just last week, I decided to get up pictures, progression pictures of myself. And I just threw them up in a video. There was no talking, just some background music. And I got more feedback from that video.
People love the before and afters.
And it was like, oh my word. This is like pictures from October 2020 when I started and progressively up. And I put the dates of the pictures on there. Didn't say a word through the whole video. Not a thing. And I was not live through the video. I just posted pictures.
Yeah, and I like to call it a before and a during, right? Because until we're dead, there's no after. It's a work in progress every single day.
Yeah.
The only other one I had done is it's my sister got me started. My sister Debbie. And since then, well, her and her daughter started it. And then one of our nieces started, another of our nieces started. So we had this family thing going. Well, I did a family update video of before and present at that time video where I told their stories as they sent them to me.
Nice.
So I just read their stories. It was really pretty cool the way it came out.
Yeah, I mean, I think the real benefit is how we can benefit others in our sphere to live different lives.
Right. And, you know, seeing other people's progress is great. And so when I did theirs, well, when I did all of ours, I mean, my husband included, he didn't have a lot of weight to lose, but he had diabetes to control, which was huge as a type 1. You know, he had a lot going on himself and still trying to get him on to tell his story. It's like, this man is stubborn.
Do you know Andrew Kutnick? I should say his middle name's Paul. For some reason, it sticks in my head.
I do not.
So Andrew Kutnick is he on Facebook. He's Andrew Paul Kutnick, Koutnik, I think. He works with a type 1 organization. He himself is a type 1. He used to work in Dominic D'Agostino's lab in Florida he got his PhD there. And he is a low carb type 1er athlete and an interesting one to follow in this. I think he just did a talk earlier this week with the ADA, interestingly enough, about low carb and diabetes, because it's an uphill battle for the ADA for sure, or with the ADA, I should say. And so Andrew's really an inspirational one to follow. He does some interesting study, in-depth things about type 1.
Right. I was pretty soon the ADA is going to be in a battle with Dr. Berry.
Well, I think he's already in it. I don't know if they're where they are in the process. I think they're still trying to.
Well, I saw his video about it. It was like, whoa, with him and Dr.
it's
Baker.
Pretty underhanded, all the stuff that goes on in the back rooms.
No doubt.
But I love his post, especially when he tags the big box companies.
Oh
yeah, for sure.
So savage. I love it.
This is Charlie. He's saying this in response to the comment you got on your live stream.
Yeah, for sure. And I will actually admit I did exactly there's like 2 bad reactions you can have to that kind of thing happening. 1, fight, and 2, cry. And I did the second. I actually just started crying. It was just like a deep place in me. And I got through it. It was fine. I got a lot of support from everybody else on the stream, and it was kind of a pivotal moment for realizing all right, that's just the way it's going to be.
Yeah. That's where the thick skin comes in. Got it.
Right. And I really honestly don't have a very thick one. I just work on it.
And that's a tricky thing too, because, that's something you hear often, have a thick skin, especially if you're going to have a channel. But then again, you have this moment that you think to yourself, if this person is attending, whatever it may be, a live, they're watching a video from someone within this community, it makes you think to yourself, okay, what journey are you experiencing or have you experienced? So it's what makes you perfect at this point Or have you forgotten when someone goes through just everything that, struggling with weight goes through, like the mental
Yeah.
toll, emotional, and it's like, how dare you? Like, how dare you make such a comment to somebody when already, like, we were already so hard on ourselves before.
This is for free live, dude, right? Like
Exactly,
I'm doing this for like
exactly.
it's not like I'm
Yeah.
sure anyway, but I will
Mhm.
honestly say not about everything. I've broadened my
Right.
scope. I think I have a better perspective
Mhm.
overall. But to
Right.
be
Mhm.
perfectly honest, early in my journey was probably some of the time I was the best able to help people starting their journey. Right.
Exactly.
Right.
It had been more recent for me. It's been years
Mhm.
now. And I quite
Right.
honestly, though I haven't forgotten some of the detail, I've forgotten some of the
Mm.
feelings, some of the
Right.
experience, some of that gets blunted. And I think when I
Mhm.
earlier in my journey, I might have been actually better at getting people
Yeah.
started than I am now.
Yeah,
So
and I loved it because even like there was points in time where like you were weighing in, but then like you would take a picture in the fitting room because those were points in time where you're like, the scale's saying this. But then it's like you would take that picture in the fitting room to show all of us. And then you're like, look, like, and then you would show the comparison, like, this was my size before,
yeah,
and look what I'm able to fit into now. And I think that's so important, especially like you said, that was when you first were starting off. And
yeah,
for those of us to see that, and it was so important, like it was such like a profound thing for somebody being a newbie to see something like that, because here it's like you're measuring with the clothing and not just the scale. The scale number was
sure.
still being mentioned, but it was very much being put across that it's not the tell all be all. And I
You
think
don't
that's
wear your
really
weight on your forehead, right?
exactly, exactly. And I think that's a big newbie thing, because like that mentality was always set in us that if you
Sure.
are going to do a weight loss journey, see what the scale's saying. And it's like
Right.
we make that the primary focus when it's not. It's truly
Yeah.
not. It's data. That's
Right.
what you've taught us, and a lot of other, in the community have taught us, yeah, if you want to weigh yourself, it's not
It's
taboo,
one point.
but it's one piece of data is the way you have to look at it, not
Sure.
everything.
Yeah.
Right.
I
Yeah.
still
I mean,
use
and
it
like,
for
oh, go
sure.
ahead. Yeah, I weigh in regularly just to see what's going on. Um,
Mhm.
like
Yeah,
I have a friend, we wear the same size, and I weigh over 30 pounds more than she does.
you see?
So we're different heights, right?
Right, right.
But I think a lot of us are really bad at
Mhm.
knowing we're like if you look at people and you try to guess what they weigh, you would
Yeah.
be so wrong.
Oh,
Mhm.
yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
like occasionally I'll see somebody on social media who says like I weigh like 220 pounds, and I'm like, you do? Like if you had asked me to
Yeah.
guess, I'd be like 160. Like it's and some people they're like I weigh 150, and I'm like, oh, you do? Because you look like you weigh like 180. So it's very like it's very hard. You
Mhm.
can't
Yeah.
tell because body composition plays such an important role. How much
Yeah.
muscle versus bone versus fat
Right,
versus
right.
height versus like all that. It's so complex and
Yeah.
different. And so there's no like ideal weight per height.
Right.
Mhm.
I like this comment with Charlie. I wish I could claim my 170-pound weight loss as some sort of tax deduction.
Like a child.
Practically a grown adult.
I
Yeah.
hear you on that one.
Jerry has a question. Speaking of the ADA, what are your thoughts on the ADS?
I don't know that I know what the ADS is. ADS. What is the
American
ADS?
Diabetes Society that Dr. Berry's working on.
I don't know anything about that, to be perfectly honest. Is he I'm like, I've not been keeping up
Yeah,
on that
he just did a live stream with Dr. Baker where he talked
one. Okay.
about
Mhm.
this.
Oh, that they want to start a new organization?
Yes, and against
Hmm.
the ADA.
I
Mhm.
Yes,
love that idea.
Yeah.
absolutely. You should
I've been a
watch
little
that.
out of it writing books. So I'm like, what's happening in the world?
It's very recent. It's very
It's
recent.
it was
So,
just this
yes.
week. I mean, it's
Uh-huh.
Okay.
fantastic. It was him and Dr. Baker, and oh my word, it was great.
Now I
Yeah, it
think
was
it's
very good.
amazing. Well, from what I've learned of it in the past 3 seconds, that sounds
Yes.
amazing, I should say. I I am just really dismayed at most of the organizations in the United States, even though I'm a pretty like moderate, straight and narrow, like law abiding, you know what I mean? Like I like
Mhm.
organizations and I like hierarchy. Like I'm a corporate girl, right? And yet, when you actually look at what's coming out of most of these organizations in the United States, it's a travesty.
Yeah.
It's
It's
frightening.
terrible. And it's if you're an organization with with science somewhere in your arena, you need to actually put science first, which the basis of science is that everything should be able to be questioned. That
Right.
is science. That's what science
Yes.
means, and if you can't do that in your organization, it's not about science anymore.
Right.
Yeah.
It's just
Yeah, and like
it's
I'm not
frightening
even
the way things are going.
Yeah.
It really
it
is.
is so dogmatic. And so I mean, I think I did see a post from Dr. Berry wearing a shirt, that if your science can't be questioned, it's not science, it's religion, right? It's definitely important that we have an open dialogue. And even in the carnivore community and even in the keto community, nobody should be super dogmatic. Again, it's not one size fits all, but and that's part of the reason I and Dr. Berry wrote the Common Sense Labs book, because if you want to be a healthy human, you need to know what you're looking at. And for blood labs, that's one of the things you can look at. And for me, I learned that certain labs look better for me on a low carb diet than a keto diet. And that's part of why I made certain decisions. And it's not the only one, right? If I was like, oh, I don't want to do that, I would have, found another workaround. But even in the, like, it's like every community, if it gets too dogmatic, you have to watch yourself, right? For the people that are like, carnivore is always better and I'm not carnivore enough and I include mustard and that means I'm broken, it's like, why? Who says? What is this? Why? And so we all have to be cautious. And and so that's very important.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's so true.
Charlie said, I consider myself a type 2 alumnus. There should be a type 2 alumni association to help people realize that type 2 diabetes is optional. That's true.
Yeah, for sure.
Wow.
For sure.
That's awesome.
I get a little irritated anytime somebody says that type 2 diabetes is what's the phrase? Is a progressive illness, right? It's there's another word, intractable. Like it's irreversible. It's a progressive, irreversible condition. And it's like, I mean, somebody just drew a line in the sand and said, this is type 2 diabetes, right? It's just a set of numbers. Pre-diabetes, in my opinion, is still type 2 diabetes. But we consider, well, if you're pre-diabetic and you lower your numbers, you could call yourself no longer diabetic. But once you hit this threshold and then it's irreversible. Why? That's like, it's more like how much damage, like, it is true. If you've been a type 2, like a severely type 2 diabetic for a very long period of time, you might have triggered things within your endocrine system and your hormones. Well, that's saying the same thing twice. That now make it so you are not like a type 1.5 or like a more akin to a type 1. You don't technically become a type 1, but so that you have insulin insufficiency. And maybe that's something particularly that can't be reversed in some people, but that's not all people. And also, and so I think we limit ourselves with our language.
Right. I had actually heard someone, I don't remember who it was, just the last couple of weeks, talk about how a newly found type 1 diabetic eating 0 carbs can reverse that. If it's waiting like years later, no. But somebody that just was diagnosed
has talked about a few cases of that happening.
Yeah, that's amazing.
I am not sure that is going to be the case for all or even most people, but it's
Absolutely.
possible. But
Right.
certainly, actually, there are doctors discussing that there might be two types of type 1 diabetes. The kind maybe more juvenile onset versus adult onset, that there seems to be a difference between one form being eventually always resulting in rapid insulin insufficiency, whereas the other type, usually the adult onset, is a slower progression and might be able to be managed for decades or even a lifetime without or with very minimal insulin intervention.
Yeah. See, my husband was diagnosed at the age of 2.
Okay,
And
well,
he's
that's a little bit
62.
different.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think we need to really work on our compassion as a community. I don't mean you guys, I just mean all of us need to stay very aware that
Yes.
not like that having to have some degree of medical intervention is not a failure. And there are some people that need that in their life. But if you're doing everything you can on the personal level to meet your medical needs halfway, quarter way, 2/3 of the way, that's still a win. And I think it's very important to say, hey, this can be a reversible disease. But at the same time, for those of you that it isn't, it's not a personal failing.
Right.
Exactly.
I
Yeah.
love my doctor now. It's like her and I get along so great. And it's
good.
Like I said, I asked for that one blood test that I've never had done. She's
I'm
like,
so glad that
okay.
you got that.
My previous doctor, when I asked him for it, he said, if your glucose is fine and your fasting or your A1C is fine, you don't need that.
Right.
Like,
and it's always a good thing to check.
Whatever.
It's always a good
I was
thing to
glad
check
I did.
sure.
Jerry wants to know, had back surgery, your opinion while healing to, I guess, up my protein.
Yeah.
Before surgery, carnivore eating 150 grams of protein.
Yeah, I think that protein is essential. I don't just think, I know that protein is going to be essential to your healing journey. It's actually less important before, though it's always important. What's actually really important is while you're healing. So in the post-surgery, I don't mean like you have to shove down a chicken leg while you're in the recovery room, but in the days and weeks and months of the healing process, I would definitely, I don't know how much I don't know how big you are as a human to know if 150 is high or low for you. So I don't necessarily know that you need to increase it, but I would definitely go for somewhere in the neighborhood of 1 gram of protein per pound of body weight, unless you're still, I'm saying this for everybody, not just for you, unless someone is still obese, right? If you're within the general arena of what you want to weigh. I don't mean, the last 10, I don't care about the last 10 pounds. Okay.
There
So,
she is. She's 5'9",
So,
63 years old.
I mean, I don't think you'll harm you might not want to eat a gram of protein per pound, but I would go like maybe 75% of that. So maybe somewhere between, hold on, I'm going to get my little calculator out. So let's see. Yeah, like 150 to 175 grams of protein would be beneficial. I know collagen also can be beneficial in that healing phase, as well as vitamin C. So those are all going to work together to help with your healing. And so I would, even if that means throwing a shake into your life that includes some collagen in there. Now, collagen is not a complete protein. It doesn't help with muscle rebuilding, but it does seem to help with some healing issues, skin, connective tissue. So I would, to cover all my bases, I would probably make sure to get a little collagen in my life and make sure the protein stays fairly high. Post surgery is not a time I would push on the fasting lever much. I've seen some people do that, and I think it's generally a mistake. I think fasting, I don't mean intermittent fasting or time restricted eating. That's fine. But I wouldn't do a long fast post surgery. Your body needs protein to like, if you think about it, like if you're a knitter and you don't put any yarn on your little needles, how are you going to knit the sweater? And that's what your body is trying to do. You're just like clack, clack with your empty needles trying to heal after surgery. That's not going to do it.
So she guesstimated 200 grams of protein.
And I don't think that would be any harm if you can, right? Post surgery appetite can be a little wonky, but for the few weeks after surgery, definitely prioritize the protein.
Yeah, she's been, what has it, Jerry, been the 19th she had her back surgery.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, I believe that was the date.
And definitely eating low carb lowers that inflammation. Eat as low inflammatory as you can. I might not go crazy with things like nuts or dairy unless you know you tolerate it well during this period, because as the lowest you can keep that inflammation, the more power you'll have to heal.
Oh, she says up here, I personally would not want to go back to keto. Carnivore is her
your
jam.
All right.
Yeah.
So you're not eating any nuts anyway.
Right.
Oh yeah. Opioids are notorious for where I'm looking for a jar I've got here. It's hiding behind my computer somewhere.
For constipation,
opioids
for sure.
are notorious for causing constipation for sure. And that's where I would say magnesium citrate is your friend. You want to stay ahead of that as much as you can. And I wouldn't even be opposed to, especially with back surgery, right? Like, not to be a little bit too much graphic knowledge, but right, like any real straining to go is going to be especially painful after back surgery.
Yeah,
so
she said it, or having back surgery, you can't push.
Right. So that's where I would probably, what's the purple laxative? I'm not giving medical advice because I am not a doctor.
That's right. I was going to say that.
Miralax.
But Miralax in general is well tolerated as it works as it brings water into the colon, which allows for some easier movements. And so, but check with your doctor before taking any pharmaceuticals. But, if they haven't already told you about Miralax and magnesium citrate, you should ask them about them.
Her surgery was the 16th. She went home on the 19th.
Okay. Well, I'm glad you're on the mend for sure. But yeah, definitely. All right. Hey, Keto Simple.
Dustin.
Hey, Dustin.
He's here. He's
Dustin and I have met. He's got an impressive beard.
Yes. He gives good hugs too. No Miralax. I read some of the same stuff as an antifreeze, so I refused it.
All right. Well, have a discussion with your doctor. I will say, it's good to know things like, oh, this is an antifreeze and this is that. But chemicals are chemicals at some point, right? And so sometimes there can be alarming chemicals in common between different things in the world. It doesn't necessarily mean that they're the same thing. So, but talk to your doctor and make the right medical decision for you for sure.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's
kind of like saying the flu. Not every flu is the same. There's different strains of even the flu.
Sure.
Not to mention
and then
stuff.
there are things like there are ingredients that are so ubiquitous. They're in everything. And that ingredient is not necessarily the active ingredient, right? It's like a lubricant or an emulsifier, or right. And so it's like, which one is the ingredient? Wouldn't ever suggest anyone drink antifreeze, right? But the ingredient in antifreeze might not be the same. They might not be the same thing. but
Yeah,
for
I
sure.
can't imagine that would be weird.
Well, but at the same time, we all have different sensitivities, and I never want to tell somebody that their concern is invalid. I think all concerns should be investigated and evaluated. It was really interesting. Just the other day, I saw somebody commenting on hormone replacement therapy and, sharing their opinion on the dangers of this or that. And I was like, well, I very much disagree with this person's opinion, but who would I be to say you're wrong, right? I would say, have you looked at this or that, or have you? I know where that perspective. I believe. Did you get your information from here? Let me tell you some things about there, right? And so we all can have that. And yeah, to Dustin's point, like maltodextrin. When I first went keto, it was like, stay away, won't touch maltodextrin, but it's very contextual.
Yeah. Yeah, I definitely think there's like a fine line, because even that also is another sense of dogmatic, is because even when people get like sick, like very, very sick, like infection sick, then it's like they have the purists coming out like, oh no, just go ahead, have electrolytes, go have some broth. But they're like at the verge of like, they need antibiotics.
Yeah, for sure. I'm pro medicine, and appropriate medicine, I should say.
Yes.
Like, but it's all discussion, right? Like,
right.
If somebody's like, oh, I don't want the sugar that's in cough syrup, I am totally in support of versions without sugar. But then people are like, but that one has aspartame, and this one, I'm like, look, there's a point. You must draw a line here.
Exactly.
And you get to decide. It's your body. You get to draw your boundary. If you don't want to take it, don't take it.
Yeah.
But also, please, if you're stuck in a mindset of all or nothing, black or white dogma, and you're coughing up a lung, that's perhaps time to say, like, do I need to be quite this dog? Like, there's no prize. The keto police doesn't actually exist. They're not taking you away to the Hooskow because you had gum. And so, but I was a member of the keto police when I first started. I was super dogmatic. I was super like, no. I made the lists. I created the files. I did it all like that. And then one day I was like, well, that's dumb.
Yeah.
Not that being careful or caring about your ingredients, that's not dumb. But the dumb part is when you let it hold you back.
Yeah. I think a lot of us went through that. A lot of us went through that. And it's one of those things, it's kind of like, I came through like the mentality of like, I don't feel ashamed of it because it's brought me to where I am today.
True.
But we were all so much very the same, like very, very strict. Everything had to be super clean. And it's really truly, like you're saying, like we put ourselves on this like personal struggle bus. And then because it's a bus, you're taking passengers with you.
Right. Welcome to my struggle bus, where we are highly conflicted yet dogmatic.
Yes.
I was very, very strict with my way of eating when I started, with what I was going to eat. What anybody else in my household did at the time, that was on them. But what I was going to do, it was like, nope, not going to do it.
Right.
And I think
Dustin has a badge and everything.
If you love that, if you're like, I eat ribeye and nothing else, and it makes me pleased as punch, great. Not a single change would I make to your life. But I don't apply it to anybody but yourself, is what I would say.
Right. Russell Stover's chocolate is good when you need to poop.
Well, yeah, that maltodextrin is a fun one. One thing, see, look at me. I'm just going to contradict myself right here. One of the things that I am always careful about is the maltodextrin, not the maltodextrin. The maltitol. That's what I was trying to say. These M words. maltitol, which is the primary sweetener in a lot of the older candies.
Right.
Excuse me, my little carbonation got me. And it, you do you, is what I would say there. But I would say a lot of people aren't aware that maltodextrin has a significant blood sugar response. And so this is why I say I am not a purist. I care about you, but I don't care what you choose to do if it's working for you. But I also like people to be educated. And one of the things I like people to know, especially if you're a type 2 diabetic or a type 1 diabetic, I guess. I'm giving the thumbs. I didn't mean to do that, but anyway, is that maltodextrin is kind of like 50% strength sugar. So it will, in many people, I should say, still cause a significant blood sugar response, especially in abundance. And so just something to be aware of with maltitol products, besides the gastric problems.
Right. And just being careful with yourself.
Right.
Like I had gone to the doctor. I had an ear infection and sinus infection a few weeks ago. So obviously I'm on antibiotics, I was.
For sure.
But prior to that, I had fallen and I had so much pain. The doctor gave me a muscle relaxer. I took one. And that night, within 5 hours after taking that one pill, I was getting heart palpitations like every 2 seconds. And it went on for hours. Well, I pulled up Dr. Google here. And one of the severest side effects was heart palpitations. Call your doctor. Well, it was 9 o'clock at night. I said, I'm going to bed.
Yeah.
I called in the morning. I said, I'm not taking any more of these. That's it. She's like, please don't.
Wow.
Yeah, those are scary, those heart palpitations. For
You
sure.
just have to really, especially, I told you backstage with the CAC being so high, and it's like, no, not going to do this.
Yeah, don't mess with the ticker.
No. But it was strange. I mean, I have researched so much stuff for myself. Like, I mentioned backstage that I had gastric bypass. Like everybody that has watched me knows this. And within 2 years, I had developed hyperinsulinemic hypoglycemia. I found that online, and I went to my doctor back then. He says, I think you're right. After he researched it, because he'd never heard of it.
Right.
And what I had found was this whole blog of post-gastric bypass patients that have suffered these same symptoms. Some have lost their pancreas, had suffered brain damage, so many things because of this. And it was a result of that daggone surgery. And it was like, holy mackerel. So I've told my experience in a video about that surgery. I said, I can't tell you what to do.
Right.
But all I can say, if it was me, I would never have done it, knowing what I know now. And it's like, it was tough. It was like, wow.
I'm sorry you have had that experience.
I still, if I eat something off plan, and I don't offset it with enough protein, I still get those low blood sugars. And I mean, like one day pre-keto, my son had come home and he came to give me a kiss on the forehead. He said, Mom, you are sweating profusely. I said, go in my room and get my meter. Because by that time, having a type 1 diabetic husband, I knew what the signs were, So I bought me a cheap meter. My sugars were at 49.
Wow. All right. A little low.
Yeah, a whole lot low. It was awful.
Wow.
It was like, so to find this blog of so many people that have suffered the same thing as a result of that, it's just incredible. It's like, oh my God. Some things you can find are good information.
Right.
Other things, no, stay off of the internet.
It's hard. I mean, that's the thing, right? A lot of people who teach classes like I do or whatever, people be like, well, why should I take a class? There's so much information on the internet. And I'm like, well, part of the thing you want to pay for is good information, because yeah, there's a
Exactly.
lot of
A lot.
I mean, and there's a lot of good free information. Nobody has to pay for anything.
Yeah.
You know, it's more like sometimes you need like a Sherpa, like
Mhm.
a guide, like what
Right.
should I pay attention to? What should I not pay attention to in the world? Because it's like
Yeah.
drinking from a fire hose.
Well,
Uh-huh.
some
It's
things
easy to
could
get
make you so
overwhelmed. Yeah.
paranoid,
Yeah.
For
you
sure.
know, like
Yeah.
let's face it, every medication
Mhm.
out there has a
Yeah.
side
Has side
effect,
effects. Right.
at
Mhm.
least one, many
Yeah.
side effects. If you worried so much about that, if
Right.
it's a medication that you absolutely
Mhm.
need,
Yeah.
you're going to die if you don't take it,
Mhm.
you know, or you're going to get really, really sick if you
Yeah.
don't take it because of the possible side effects.
Mhm.
That doesn't mean they're going to happen to you, you know?
Sure.
Yeah.
And that's
Sure.
where, whew, there's so much
And
out
I
there
think
that can just make
then
you
you're
so
educated.
paranoid.
Right.
For sure. You can be educated and ask your doctor, is there an alternative? Because I'm concerned about this or that
Mhm.
side effect, because I think
Right.
that'll impact me specifically more than most people,
Right.
maybe, right? Like it's a drug where there's a, you know, a higher blood sugar risk. And if you're a type 2 diabetic, you might be like, well, maybe do you have an alternative that has a different side effect that I could choose, right? And that's where being educated could come in. But don't let your education stop you, or like don't let your education kill you, right? Like
Right.
don't be so fearful that you're gonna you know pick up drop dollars to pick up pennies.
Hmm. Well, that's why, you know, when you're looking, that medicine that had given me the palpitations, I
Yeah.
didn't look anything up until after the fact.
After, right? Why do I feel so weird?
And I mean, I'm sitting on the couch watching TV and it wouldn't stop. It was like, it would happen and it would ease up, and the next couple minutes it would happen again. And it went on, I
Terrible.
kid you not, 6 hours
Ugh.
constant. I tried to
Wow.
go to bed. It wouldn't stop. I'm like,
Mm.
oh, this is nuts. So I told my husband, I said, I will not take another one of those. I got up in the
Yeah.
morning and I checked that's when I checked the side effects on that medicine.
Right.
For sure.
Yeah, one of the severe side effects. I'm like, thanks.
It's always so funny to me because last night I was watching a TV show. I think it was a movie where they had commercials, and there was a commercial for a hot flash medicine, right? And I had just read about this hot flash medicine earlier in the day, and it was super interesting because people started, like, the pharmaceutical industry started creating hot flash medications
Mhm.
after there was so much blowback about hormone replacement therapy. And I'm like, and I was reading about it and how there were a lot of women who were so scared of hormone therapy that they started looking for alternative medications to deal with hot flashes. And it was so interesting to me to watch this commercial that was happening at the same time, and being like, it was a perfect. I'm not saying that everyone should be on HRT.
Mhm.
However, it was really interesting that this medication was created because of a fear that was created about another thing,
Mhm.
you know. And it's
Yeah.
but should you? But is the first thing probably a better choice than the thing they created to replace it
Mhm.
because of your fear, right? It
Yeah.
was one of those, like, a lot of people let emotions and headlines dictate
Mhm.
their health choices instead of, like, what is the actual research.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
great. Yeah, rabbit hole to the 50th power. So
For
much to
sure.
learn.
For sure.
Yeah.
Now she says, can we talk to semaglutides now, Kim, to get your opinion?
Sure. I think I have the same opinion I talked about earlier, which is I think there's too much shame in health topics. And I think semaglutide or semaglutide falls into that category. For me, is it a good choice for everyone? No. Is it the miracle drug with no issues that you have to think through before you take it? No. You know, is it something that I think every single person should be on? Absolutely not. Is it the right thing to do in very specific circumstances with very specific situations? Maybe. So I'm not a no on it, but I think
What
you
are
have
they
to-
anyway?
So a semaglutide is the drug name of something called a GLP-1 or a glucagon-like peptide 1 agonist. It's an agonist, which means it's a mimic. So we have something called the incretin hormones, which I really want to call incretins, but they're incretin hormones. There are two that we know of, GLP-1 and GIP, which stands for something that I can never get right. Glucagon, something, anyway, peptide. But the GLP and the GIP are the two incretin hormones. These actually, in a healthy body, are triggered by eating and are sent into your gut, and they tell the pancreas to make more insulin. So it's that first phase response and second phase response when you eat. And in fact, in a healthy person, so like a kid, let's say as an example, about 70% of the pancreatic response in their body is signaled by these incretin hormones. So the body saying, you ate this thing, we're going to give you the right amount of insulin for it, right? It's that connection. As people become insulin resistant, that response drops way down. So you don't get anywhere near that same response. And so the amount of insulin that has to be produced, because you aren't now staying ahead of it, right? It's like clean while you're making dinner, or make a mess of the whole kitchen and then have to clean it up. When you become insulin resistant, you've got piles of dishes. So you need a lot more insulin to fix this problem now. So that's what it is. It's these incretin hormones. They were invented as type 2 diabetes medications, and they're great at lowering blood sugar because they replace this in the gut. Then they found out that they help people lose weight. Why is that? Well, the incretin hormones make you feel full, and they slow gastric emptying, and they do a bunch of stuff. The difference is our natural, I can talk a lot on it. The natural production of incretin hormones have a enzyme that shuts them off within a couple of minutes. So you make it and it shuts down. So it's a very short cycle. The incretin hormones, these mimics, have no shutdown. So the enzyme that shuts it off when your body makes the incretin hormones doesn't work on the medications. So you're constantly having these incretin hormones sort of stimulated, I guess you could say. And they're in your system because you've injected them, right? And so then it's just a shelf life issue, a half-life issue. It takes a certain number of days for them to work their way out of your system, which is why the hunger suppression is so much more long lasting. Whereas with the natural production, you ever notice like you're starving and you take a bite of food and within like 1 or 2 bites, you're like, I'm no longer starving, but you haven't digested that food. It's because you've gotten a little spurt of these hormones that help you suppress hunger. But then those go away, but by then you're digesting your food and you're actually feeling full from the food. But the way these shots work is they give you that full feeling for a couple of reasons for a week. So I think, but they don't fix everything, right? They mostly work on the hunger level in terms of causing weight loss. So I'm like 2 thumbs up if you're an uncontrolled, geez Louise.
That was nice.
If you're a type 2 diabetic that is unable to control your blood sugar through diet, you're trying, you're doing your very best, but the blood sugars are staying too high, then I'm like, might work for you. In terms of just as a weight loss thing, if you're somebody who's done everything you can, your diet is pretty aligned, and you're just hungrier than you can deal with, and you've done everything, you've adjusted your food, you've worked on all the things, and you're like, I just feel cursed to be morbidly obese for the rest of my life,
Mhm.
And I'm like, well, maybe it might be worth a look-see.
And this is just a generic for Ozempic, right?
So it's not a generic, it's
Uh-huh.
the medication, it's the core medication name.
Okay,
So, but
okay.
Ozempic is a brand name.
Right, right.
It's sort of like Tylenol is a brand name of acetaminophen, right? It's the
Mhm.
medication is so they're all itides. There's semaglutide,
Mhm.
tirzepatide. There's a bunch of different medications that end itide
Mhm.
that are all different incretin mimicking hormones.
Wow.
Yeah.
So Brenda asked Sana when her baby is due.
Yes, I answered in the chat.
September 3rd.
Nice. Congrats.
Thank you.
Awesome.
All right. So that was a lot of information about
Yes.
and the side effects are significant.
Yes.
The side effects are like, I don't know how to say. When it was described to me, it
Mhm.
sounds a lot like pregnancy, with that,
Mm.
like the kind of like bleh feeling all the time, and
Yeah.
the food aversions and the like. It's So for sure, it's not without
Mhm.
downsides, and
Right.
that's why I'm not like, this is a miracle drug that all people need to be
Mhm.
on and it's going
Yeah.
to solve the weight loss crisis. Absolutely not. I'm just
Mhm.
like, look, if you get really well educated and you evaluate things
Right.
like
Yeah.
and you go into things with your eyes open, I'm never going to tell somebody that they
Mhm.
made the wrong choice if they made the right choice for them.
Yeah, I think
Exactly.
if it was me, if it had been pre-keto,
Right.
pre-gastric bypass, because I was trying to run from heart disease that's in my family, diabetes,
Sure.
so much high blood pressure that I battled from the time I was a teenager, trying to get away from it all. Then I would possibly have done something like that.
Yeah. And
Instead
one
of
of
the
the
surgery.
and then some of the side effects, I believe, are manageable. One of the things I'm most concerned about with it is actually muscle loss. There's a lot of tales of people losing muscle on these GLP-1 agonists and GIPs. But I believe, it's my belief, that
Mhm.
that is mostly an effect of improper diet, right? Because if you're eating stupid things that keep coming up, I'm too expressive. If you don't eat a good diet and you just
Mhm.
cut your hunger so much that your calories are now 1,000 calories a day, and those 1,000 calories are from cookies, that's not going to turn out well.
No.
So that's why you really need to prioritize your protein, do all the things, and make sure you're not taking so much of the drug that you're not eating enough to
Mhm.
like meet your nutritional Tetris, things like
Right.
that.
So, Jerry, but will people regain all the weight they lose on these miracle shots? I heard they stay on these for life.
You will most likely need to be on some form of medication. Like if you lost the weight, right?
Right.
Think about it this way, right? If you alter your chemistry to lose the weight and then you take that away, I have
Mhm.
heard some people manage to keep the weight off, but most people will start to regain the weight. So that's part of the decision you have to make. And in the United States, they're like $1,300, $1,400 a month right now. The
Oh, yeah.
cost may come down at some point, but if
Right.
that's something you're not down for on an
Mhm.
ongoing basis, then you
Yeah.
probably need to, because I have to say that losing a bunch of weight and then regaining it is more psychologically damaging than
Mm.
not losing the weight at all. It's also more physically damaging.
Well, and
So
all of
that's
us
something
have
you
done
gotta
that,
take into
not with the
account.
shots, but all of us have done that have done
Right.
dieting all our life. You lose 20, you gain
Mhm.
40. You lose 10, you're
Right.
going to gain 20 with
Mhm.
all those
Absolutely.
fad diets because they're
Right.
not sustainable.
Yeah.
Right. Right.
It's like that's such a common occurrence. But these,
Absolutely.
I feel
I feel
attacked about
attached.
his kitchen. Okay.
I don't know what I said
Arlene
about it.
says hi.
Hi, Arlene. Yeah, and I don't want to sound like I'm like just a geek. So when you're like, there's a new thing to learn about, I'm like, let me
Yeah.
learn all about this semaglutide. I'm like, are parts about it I'm like, well, that's really cool. But that doesn't mean it's a good idea for all the people just because I found it scientifically interesting, you know. But I also will say again, maybe it's not the wrong choice for some people.
Yeah, for some. We actually had a guest last week, Sarah's Joyful Journey, and she shared with us her experience with Ozempic. And it got to the point where the doctor kind of kept pushing, like, oh, well, let's tweak your dosages a little bit. And all in all, she ended up in the hospital.
Yeah,
And
she was really
it was
sick.
very much, it was very much where she was very, very sick. But then the doctor still said, well, you do kind of need to be on this for the rest of your life. And that was not something that was stated or mentioned
Yeah, you need
at
to
the initial
to go in
appointment.
this real educated
Exactly.
about
Yeah.
all the bad things that could happen, the
Mhm.
way you need to manage yourself, the way
Yes.
you can't just take this drug, you need to manage this drug. Ozempic face, I got that one. That it's just weight loss. It's just rapid weight loss. Rapid weight loss
Mhm.
causes the whole body to look saggy. I'm again kind of middle of the road. I think some of the alarmist things we're told about it. There's an understandable explanation. If you lose 100 pounds in 6 months, you're gonna look like a hot mess. Like you're gonna lose all the fat in your face. You're gonna lose all your muscle. You're gonna lose. It's gonna be bad. You need to do things in a intelligent, measured manner.
Yeah.
Right.
I'll tell you, I thought I was so well prepared for the bypass because you go through so many support meetings and a psych evaluation and all this stuff, and then they tell you how to eat after surgery. Now, here's the biggest falsity I've ever heard, and we were told, "Don't eat white rice, eat brown rice. Don't eat white potatoes, eat sweet potatoes. Don't eat the white breads, eat the darker breads."
Right, because it makes
All
such a
that
difference.
kind of stuff.
Right.
I did all that.
Sarcasm face.
I did exactly. I did all that.
Yeah.
I lost a lot of weight, and then it all's come back on. Majority of it came right back on over the years, and I'm like, why are they telling people this?
Well, now you know better. That's the
They offer
thing.
the
Now
carbs.
you know better.
You do
Yes,
better.
you do
Crazy.
better. Absolutely.
Yeah, and for sure, like Dustin was saying, digestive systems shutting down. And it's, every single drug has side effects.
Yeah.
Never choose a drug when you have alternative options. And you need to make informed decisions.
Yes. And I have to reiterate what Jerry says here.
Yeah.
No, thanks.
Thank you so much. And we have
happy to be
kept
here
you on an hour and a half.
I'm a chatty girl.
I love it. I mean, you're so full of information too, which is there's chattiness and then there's a wealth of information that comes out of that chattiness that makes it all worthwhile.
An abundance of knowledge.
I mean, it's great.
Now, thanks, guys. It was
all
super
these
fun.
things that you're doing, do the heart. I just want to see how it comes. There you go.
I'm old. This is the way we do hearts over our age. I hear that the kids do it like this.
Yeah.
I'm like, is that right? All right, guys. It was super fun. Thanks for having me on.
Thank you for joining us, and thank you everyone in the chat. And like Lasonic always says, it's a Friday night, and to give your time to us, it means so much to us.
Yes.
Thank you so much. And everybody have a good night, and we will talk to you next week.
Yes. Thank you, everybody. Blessed weekend.